All right, everyone, welcome to episode 69 of the Performance Advantage podcast with myself, Dr. Will O'Connor, and Dr. Matt Miller. Sports Science, the Performance Advantage podcast is where we bring sports science to the people. Dr. Matt Miller is a world leader in mountain bike research and the inventor of the brake case sensor and analysis software. He has a lifetime experience in MTB, racing, training, coaching, equipment, everything to do with mountain biking.
Dr. Will, besides putting up with my BS almost every day, he's a dad and an elite ultramarathon runner and a professional coach. So he works with Training Peaks as a coach educator, and he's also an expert in ketogenic performance nutrition. He loves talking about ketogenic diets. Hit him up if you want to know anything about it. Ask him what to eat. He will love it.
Yes, and
power meters are pretty much our thing. I love mountain bike power meters, I love brake power meters, and I love how fitness integrates with skill, and Will really loves running power meters. And there's actually not a lot of information out there about using power meters in running and using power meters in mountain biking. Lots of information about using a power meter in road cycling, but running and mountain biking are not really well covered scientifically. So what we have been doing is putting together two separate courses on using a power meter in mountain biking and a separate course on using a power meter in running. So you can pre-register for those courses now on performanceadvantagepodcast.com. Save yourself 30% if you sign up and pre-register before they launch in January.
all right, Matt, we've already actually recorded our interview with
It was
Kevin,
awesome.
And I don't want to even, he's just saying what we try to reiterate for the last 68 episodes, I hope. And he went to the Olympics.
Kevin Van Hoovels is a Belgian mountain biker, and he had a really good career. His highlights were top 10 at the World Championships in mountain biking. He went to the Olympics, represented his country, and we got in touch with Kevin because he also studies in sports science. So he was working at the University of Kent for a while as a sports science technician. And it's really cool for him to kind of tell us and open up with us about how mountain biking was for him, how he climbed through the ranks, what his training looked like, how the sport changed, and ultimately what he learned from it. And he has a really interesting perspective, and this was a really fun chat with Kevin.
Yeah, well, I don't want to spoil it, so we'll just get into it. All right, let's get Kevin on. All right, Kevin, welcome to the show all the way from Belgium. How are things going for you over there?
Not perfect because with the coronavirus, we're in the second lockdown now, so we're still allowed to go outside, but not everything is open, and things are going in the wrong way. But yeah, we're still allowed to do the sport and to go outside, so that's fine.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky here because I was just meeting with someone from France, and also they're in the second lockdown and, really struggling with the second wave. But in New Zealand, we're living a bit of a utopia, right, Matt?
Yeah, especially because we're now coming into summer. So it's nice to be able to enjoy the summer. But being locked down in winter maybe isn't as bad. So Kevin, you have a really interesting and really high level career in mountain biking. And it's really cool to be able to link up with you to kind of get your take on that, especially because you have a really good understanding of sports science and you work as a coach. And when you were racing and went to the Olympics, mountain biking was a little bit different than it is now because it's changed a lot. So I guess to get things started, can you kind of tell us, just a little bit about yourself and what you do now? And then we'll kind of get into your history as a mountain biker.
Okay, yes. So I'm Kevin Van Hoovels. I'm from Belgium. I do already mountain biking from when I was 15 years, so that's more than 20 years now. I always enjoyed doing sports, especially mountain biking. But I did it already when I was 15 years on a competitive level. But I always combine it with my studies. So first, I did a master in sports science. Then I combined it with a PhD also in sports science, but I stopped my PhD to try to become a professional cyclist, which worked well. So I had luck. So from 2011 till 2016, I was a professional cyclist. And then 2017, I had to stop my career. And then the last 3 years, I was working at the University of Ghent as a research technologist. I recently stopped there to look for something new, to find a new thing to do. And then I start coaching of cyclists, mountain bikers. Now it's not my full-time job yet, but I hope in the future I will become a full-time coach.
So one thing I'm super interested for someone from Belgium, how did you get into mountain biking? You know, we know cycling, we know cyclocross, but mountain biking doesn't seem to be like one of the chosen disciplines.
Yeah, that's right. In Belgium, cyclocross and road racing are very popular. But when I was like 15 years, mountain biking was also very popular in Europe or all over the world. That were the years when like Philip Meiraga was one of the best of the world. So we had someone to look for some idols, and I think I started mountain biking because I saw them on television, and I liked to be outside in the woods, to be adventurous. So I also did some road cycling, but it wasn't that exciting as mountain biking. So I think it started there.
That's so interesting, actually, because one of the things you said is you got interested in mountain biking because you saw them on television.
Yes.
We never see mountain bikers on television in New Zealand. That's amazing.
Yes, but now also in Belgium. Now also in Belgium, not anymore. But I remember when I was young, like mountain biking was broadcasted on Eurosport on television, so it was very popular that time, and you could watch it on television. Now we have Red Bull TV, and we can watch it on Red Bull TV, but not on the normal channels of your television. So it's a pity that you can't follow it that good anymore. But when I was young, it was very popular.
Oh, nice. That's really cool. I think that's it's nice to have it on because Red Bull TV, you almost need to know like that it exists. The coverage is amazing and it's come so far, but if you actually don't know about mountain biking, there's not really a good way to find it unless you have like the Red Bull TV app or you go on Pink Bike or one of those websites. But it kind of sounds like, you know, by being able to like just flick through the channels and find it on TV, that's so handy and that kind of opens it up to everyone.
Yeah, I think that's where, you know, we've got all these dedicated channels now. You know, I'm big fan and follower of triathlon, and it used to be on TV, you know, just on what we have Sky Sport. It's kind of like Eurosport. But now, you know, they've got their dedicated app, you know, so they can get all the TV rights. And Matt, I remember you introducing me to Red Bull TV. I had no idea.
Oh, really?
I had no idea that Red Bull TV even existed. And then they have this amazing coverage, and people, if you're outside of the sport, how are you going to find it? It's whereas like Kevin's saying, and it happened in New Zealand when the Olympics was on, and Hamish Carter and Bevan Doherty won gold and silver, which sparked like a triathlon revolution in New Zealand because it was on prime time. I think it was around 6 p.m. You know, in the evening. Everybody watched it, whereas otherwise it didn't exist. You know, you've got someone like Kevin who's watched it on TV and ended up going to the Olympics.
Yeah. So that must have been an interesting journey then, Kevin, kind of coming in, just learning about mountain biking around 15. Can you tell us a little bit about like how you moved up like through the ranks? Because you moved up pretty quickly, didn't you?
There was like a big jump in my career, but I will start when I was 15. Yeah, I started mountain biking a bit younger than 15, I think. First with my parents, just going riding around the neighborhood. But quickly they couldn't follow me, so they said, maybe you have to look for a club to go and ride with. So that's how contacted the local club. And I went riding with them, and I was still 13, 14 years old, and they say, yeah, maybe you're not too bad. Maybe you have to try to do some competition. So that's how I started to do competition, first very locally, and then, every year it went better. As a junior rider, I was, I think, top 5 national level, so it was good, but it wasn't international level. Then as an under 23 rider, the first years also I had some good results on national level, and I did my first World Cups. But the problem there wasn't separate under 23 categories. So when we have to start with the elite riders all together, I remember one year in Hoovels in Belgium, famous World Cup. I think I had number 260 to start. So
What?
It's quite difficult to get a good result then. So the first lap you lose already 10 minutes almost because you have to wait every downhill to go down. So that was quite difficult. So luckily now it's changed a lot. There are not that much riders anymore. You have to have like 20 UC points. I don't know how much it's now. Before you can start in a World Cup, and under 23 and elite riders are separate. So it's much better, but in the past, it was sometimes a big problem because it was too popular, and it's very difficult as a young rider because there wasn't a separate category to get to a higher level, because you always have to start at the back, and it's impossible to get a good result in the World Cup. So it's much better now. But then, I think I was third year under 23. I became national under 23 champion. So it was already quite nice to become national champion. And I start to believe that maybe I could become a professional cyclist and try to get a professional career. So the years thereafter, I did more and more races nationally and internationally. I think in 2010, I did my first Cape Epic, which was really nice to do because, that's like the Tour de France of mountain biking. And also I became, I think 2010 also national champion at the elite category then. So then, was also my first year I was doing my PhD. So it was a bit difficult to combine both. So I was thinking, what should I do now? I was 25 years old then. Should I finish my PhD? It was still 4 years to go. Or should I try to become a professional cyclist? So difficult choice, but I made the choice to try to become a professional cyclist. And that was a big difference. I stopped working, doing my PhD, and I just 1 year I said, I'm gonna just try to become a professional cyclist. I only do cycling and resting and do races all over the world. That was 2011. And the progress I made that year was really incredible, I have to say. I think in 2010, my best result in the World Cup was 50. So 50 place. So it's not bad, but it's not good enough to become a professional cyclist. But then in 2011, I think the first World Cup 35, the second 30. And so it went on. I think my best result that year was around 20 place. So I made a big progression. And then at the end of the season, I was selected for my first World Championships. It was in Switzerland in, I think Champéry, if I still remember. It was my first World Championships, so for me it was quite special. And I didn't have very big ambitions. But I knew that to be selected for the Olympic Games the year after in 2012 in London, you have to ride the top 16 if you want to go to the Olympics. So I didn't believe I could make that because my best World Cup result was 22 or so, I don't know. So still a bit of a gap, but that day at the World Championships, everything went right. I think I had perfect day on the day I have to have my perfect day, and I became 15th, so I was directly qualified for the Olympics the year after. So that was quite amazing for me, and it opened a lot of doors. Also, then I get a contract at the government in Belgium, so they paid me to do mountain biking. So that was very nice. I had I could live from what I love to do. And then thereafter, 2012 Olympic Games, very special thing to do, of course, was an amazing experience to be at the Olympic Village and to see all the athletes there was pretty nice.
Before we go into the Olympics, you made the commitment to go full time, which is big. We've worked with a lot of athletes in that position, but it worked for you. A lot of athletes will become, I guess, fixated, like the mental struggle of the performance anxiety or the amount of time to train. They get overtrained, but you excelled. What do you think was the big difference for you in quitting your PhD and stopping work and focusing full time? Was it the training, or was it the recovery, or was it a combination of both?
I think, of course, a combination of both, because you have much more time to train. So you also train much, but I think I didn't train that much more because the recovery is much more important. You don't realize that when you're working. You think, you work from 9 to 5 or even other hours, sometimes more, sometimes a bit less. And then afterwards, you still have to train 2 or 3 hours, and then you come home at 10 o'clock in the evening, and then you have to eat and go to sleep, and the next day you have to wake up early again. So maybe you do still a lot of hours of training, but you don't recover. So that was, I think, the biggest difference, that you go training in the morning, you have whole afternoon to rest, to do it easy, to recover, to do things you enjoy. And I think that made the big difference.
So when you talk about recovery, a lot of, I'm just thinking of someone listening here thinking, well, my job's not very hard. I can work my job and train and not feel too tired. When you talk about recovery and this kind of extra recovery that you had by not working, what do you think of when you think of recovery and the extra recovery that you had? Were you sleeping more? Were you just putting the feet up? What were you doing?
Yeah, of course you sleep a bit more because you don't have to wake up early to go to work. But also most of the things are, I think, recovery physically, because you have more time to recover from your training, but also mentally, you don't have to worry about things at work. So maybe you don't have like a very physical job where you have to carry things around all day, or maybe you're sitting just behind your computer all day, but mentally it's quite hard also to sit behind your computer. So when you don't have worries or things of your work anymore, you just have to think about what you're going to do the next day, which bike ride you want to do. That's the big difference.
And then how, if you can remember back, just on average, I guess, like what kind of training hours were you putting in each week?
I think it should be somewhere in between, it depends, of course, on the period and the time of the year, but I think on average, 15 hours average, maybe between 15 and 20 hours average, it's 2-3 hours a day, but sometimes you have days of 5 hours. You have recovery days of 1 hour or even rest days. So it really depends, but yeah, it should be somewhere in between 15 and 20 hours, I think.
I think most people would probably think, oh, well, suddenly you don't have a normal job, like mountain biking is your job. You're just going to be out there 30 or 40 hours a week, just kind of thrashing yourself. You have all this time to recover, so why don't you just recover more and just ride heaps? I guess as we know, though, that doesn't work. And even at your level, that wasn't what you did.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not because too much hours. That was also always my opinion, and it still is my opinion. And you see that it changed a lot also on road cycling, especially in cycling. It was always like you only have to do a lot of hours and racing, and for the rest, it's not important. But I think that changed a lot. It's not the hours that are important, but it's the quality of the training that's important. You have to really do specific training for your race, and then training and resting, the combination of both is so important.
Yeah. So I guess on that specific training, I think that's kind of a nice segue into kind of maybe how mountain biking has changed, because back in the early 2000s and before that, mountain biking they were really long. Like, even when I was doing like junior expert races, we would still race for like 2.5 hours in a cross-country race. And World Cups were really similar, and probably the races that you were doing. So could you talk to us a little bit about like how mountain biking changed as you saw it and you experienced it, and then maybe then we can get into how the training changed to be specific to that?
Yes, indeed, changed quite a lot. When I was starting, when I was like under 23 rider, and I was starting doing World Cups. Like I said before, we also have to start with elite riders, so we have to do the same amount of laps in the same amount of time. I think it was around 2 hours and a half racing, and the laps are a lot longer than now, like 6 or 7 kilometers of per lap. So maybe sometimes it was like half an hour just for one lap. So it was quite long races. Also, more longer climbing, I remember. So now the modern mountain biking is short, explosive climbs. In the past it was quite longer climbs, longer downhills. Also a bit more of recovery sometimes in between. Yes, like when the lap is longer, you also have some more flat sections. Now it's up or down. It's almost no recovery. So that's changed quite a lot. So indeed, the training is also changed a lot. I think in the past, of course, you always have to do endurance training. So your aerobic fitness has to be super high, but that's for every endurance sport. That stays important. But yeah, in the past, you don't have to do like that very short explosive trainings, because only for the start you needed to be quite explosive. But then I remember it was like the start and the first lap were very important. Then you had like a few laps. It was like a bit more, I don't want to say easy, but it's because it's never easy, but a bit more relaxed. And then in the end, you can make the difference. But now it's 1 hour and a half, just full gas from the beginning till the end. You don't have laps to recover or easy parts, in the track. So that changed quite a lot.
So back in when you first started mountain biking, what was kind of one of your go-to, let's say, interval sessions? And then like did that interval session change as mountain biking changed?
Ooh, that's a long time ago, so I don't really remember what my interval sessions were in the beginning, but I think they were longer and not that intensive. So it was like, I was just saying something like maybe 5 times 6 minutes. I don't remember, so I don't know. But at the end, I still remember it was the combination of both. So you did like longer intervals because mountain biking is so intensive, so you have to keep that intensity quite long, but also very short intervals to have that very explosive for the start and also for the short climbs. So like between half a minute and 2 minutes intervals, but all full gas. So yeah, that were trainings I did the last years quite a lot to prepare for the races.
What about the technicality, like your technical skills on the bike? Because, you know, if you've got 2.5 hours, you can afford to lose 1 minute. It's as a percentage, that's not a lot of time. But then in an hour and a half, at the speed as it increases, if you start to lose that 1 minute on some of those climbs, you're really far back. So did you have to work on your technical abilities? Did the technicality of the tracks change?
Yes. That's also a thing that changed quite a lot. In my first years, I don't gonna say the tracks weren't that technical, but it was different technical. It was like more natural tracks, so nothing made, so no grubs, no jumps, no rock gardens. It was just, just through the forest or through the fields, going up and down. And that was still technical because, at that time we had the bikes weren't the same as now, so that's also a big difference. But now the last years, or I think it's already 10 years or more going now, it's made more spectacular for the spectators. So more grubs, more jumps, more rock gardens, and that's something specific you have to train for, especially because here in Belgium you don't have that really much. So you have to train that. Difficult to train them. So you have to look for a special track where you have some rock gardens or jumps. So that made it a bit more exciting to do. And that changed a lot. And indeed, you can't afford to lose 10 seconds every downhill, because when there are 3 downhills in one lap, you lose half a minute every lap. So that's too much. So that's also something very important.
One of the things I'm really interested in, because I'll never experience it, and most people will never experience it, is the Olympics. How did you feel when you finally got invited to represent your country, like in the Olympics in this sport that you love? And then, like, how was it? Like, what did you do? And how did you enjoy the whole experience of the Olympics?
Yes, that's of course something special. I told before that I didn't expect to be at the Olympics in 2012. I was maybe in the back of my head trying to be there in 2016, because 2011 was my first year. I tried to become a professional cyclist and I put everything on my sport. So when I qualified for the Olympics end of 2011, was a dream that was coming true. I couldn't believe it. I think I finished 15 at the World Championships, and I was like I was become the world champion, because for me it was almost the same. The progression I made that year was incredible. So that was already very amazing. And then it opened a lot of doors when you qualified for Olympics. I could go on training camp with the Olympic team. I did the test race on the Olympic track I had a bit of luck. It was in London, so for me it's like it's only a few hours from here, so that was quite easy. You could go there to do the track, and it's nice to be close to you. So that was already quite amazing. And then 2012, well, for me it was a bit of a difficult year in the beginning, because I did the Cape Epic again in 2012, but I was a bit sick there, so I still finished, but when you're not 100%, you don't recover that well also. So the beginning of the season wasn't quite going like it should be, so the results weren't that good. So that's mentally quite tough if you know that you have to go to the Olympics. But then I recovered well, and then the races before the Olympics are getting better and better. So I knew that my form was there, and I had the legs to do good results. Yeah, and then the Olympics, it's crazy. It's so big. So many athletes, so many sports. It's an amazing experience to be in the Olympic Village, to see that athletes, to see how well it's organized. So that's already quite amazing, but it's also a bit stressful, of course, because it was my first Olympics, and it's always special. The pressure is quite high. The press is there. Normally you don't see that much press in mountain biking, but at the Olympics they are there. So you feel, of course, the pressure, and it's something special. But yeah, I think I managed quite well. I had some bad luck in the start. I was, I think, on second or third row to start, but I hooked up with someone else in the start, and I was like at the last 5 to really start. So I lost a lot of time during the start, and in the first laps you have to try to pass the other riders. So I lost quite a lot of time in the first laps, but I finished 19th. But when I looked at my lap times, I saw that maybe top 12 was possible. So of course you're disappointed because there should have been better, but at the end, wasn't that bad also. So that was an amazing experience.
How did you handle before the Olympics? So Cape Epic is generally around January or February. Olympics are August. How did you handle the pressure in training, and not overdoing it or succumbing to the big pressure of, okay, Kevin, you're going to the Olympics. You need to perform for your country. And then, you say some of your results didn't go well at the beginning of the season. And were you coaching yourself? Did you have a good team around you? How did you handle that whole build up to ensure that you got there, in your peak?
Yeah, that's of course a difficult one, especially for me, because like I said, 2012 was my second year as a professional cyclist. So I hadn't that much experience in preparation for like a big goal, or especially for the Olympics. So, but I had a good team. I had support of the national team. I had a good coach also. Maybe it was quite an advantage. My coach was coming from the athletics. And I think maybe that was an advantage, because they are used to focus on 1 or 2 competitions. When you have a cycling coach, he's used to, you have to be good the whole year, especially with someone from road cycling. In the past, you have to be good from let's say March till September. So, but maybe that was quite an advantage that my coach was quite confident that I would be in good shape at the Olympics, and it's always difficult because you're not used to it. But I think we made at the end the focus was there, and I also knew from the year before that also was the goal to focus at the World Championships, and then I was also at my top. So that gave me at least a bit confidence.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. That sounds like some amazing periodization where it would be really difficult to kind of manage mentally when you know that there's so much on the line, and then the beginning of the season doesn't go the way you maybe want it to. But if you're training properly for a big event so much further down the road, what you're doing is you're building that fitness through, the event like the Cape Epic. And when you're building fitness, you also have a higher level of fatigue, which means that when you get to some of those other races, you're probably not going to perform at your best due to that fatigue. But then, since you are building to that major event, which for you was the Olympics, which is just huge, then you taper in, and that's when your fatigue starts to go away. And obviously for you, your performance was really good at the right time. That just sounds like great periodization.
Yeah, that's right. But it's very difficult, of course. And also mentally, it's quite difficult to race and to not get the results you want to get. So of course, then you have to have a good coach who's saying that it's normal. It's because we are working on the Olympics as a goal. So that then is a good coach, and he has to be also a bit of a mental coach then. Very important, because if otherwise your confidence is going down, and then it's very difficult to keep focusing on the goal.
Yeah. So you had a training so obviously you're a really high level mountain biker, and you have this training in sports science. So you know a lot. How much of a scientific approach did you and your coach, who's from another sport, how much of a scientific approach did you guys have to your training? Were you using power meters, heart rate monitors, altitude tents? What kind of things were you guys using?
At that time, I don't know if there were already power meters for mountain biking, but I didn't have one, so I don't know. But I had the power meter on my road bike. I had heart rate monitor, and I think I already had an altitude tent, so I could sleep at altitude in my own house. So that's it's quite easy. So we try to do as much scientific approach as possible. Of course, it changed a lot over the last 10, 15 years. Now we know a lot more than then, but I think we try to do as much as possible. So we tried the altitude tent, of course, before already to see how direction was of my body, how long should I sleep in it, how should we adjust the training. And then the specific trainings, I was doing most of the, like interval trainings on my road bike because there I had a power meter, so it's a bit easier to do interval training with the power meter than without the power meter. So yeah, we tried our best. Of course, it changed a lot, so now we should do a lot more, but, what was already, on that time, I think we used quite a lot of it.
So do you look back on that time and think, I can't believe I did that. Like, that didn't even make sense. And like, do you think, the knowledge of sports science has come to a point where you think maybe some of the things that you were doing in preparation then are maybe not the best practice now? Or do you think like things are similar enough that you, would probably take the same approach now?
Probably would take a different approach now, but I don't think I did much wrong then, let's say. So yeah, of course things have changed and we know a lot more now, and I don't think it's only training that changed a lot, but also like nutrition changed a lot, recovery changed a lot. There are so much things. Yeah, the technology, the bikes changed a lot. Everything has changed a lot the last 10, 15 years. So I can't remember. I thinking that I did something completely wrong then, but of course, you should have, now you should things do different, but still not. I hope I didn't make big mistakes then.
You know, you say how the nutrition, maybe we know a little bit more about nutrition. And one of the things that I talk about with a lot of athletes is there seems to be this really big preoccupation with wanting to be as light as possible, right? So we know that, if you want to lose weight, well, you need to watch that energy balance for one. And at least with nutrition now, we know we can kind of manipulate the kinds of food that we're eating at different times. Obviously, Will, you're the expert in this. But Kevin, I'm just wondering, like, how important to you was it to be as skinny and as light as possible? And what kind of things did you do to make that happen, or not make that happen, or not worry?
I think I had, and I still have, the luck that I don't have to watch very much on my nutrition to become quite sharp. So that's a big advantage. I know people who in the winter are 5 or maybe more kilograms heavier than in summer. For me, it was like 1 or 2 kilograms more. But when I was just training and then eating healthy foods during the season, I already became on my competition weight, so I don't really have to focus on my nutrition. Of course, you have to focus on your nutrition, but not that much as other people. So I even have to watch that I wasn't getting too sharp. So for me, it wasn't a big issue to become sharp because, yeah, it's maybe too much an obsession of a lot of people to be as sharp as possible. I think especially in the modern mountain biking with more explosive climbs, I don't think it's a problem when you're when you're too sharp, you lose a bit of your power. So then maybe you're not that explosive anymore. So it's of course it's a bit looking what's the perfect weight for you, but for me it wasn't a big issue.
How much food were you eating? Were you just eating as much as you could? Like whatever food was there, you would just eat it? It sounds like you were quite lucky and maybe you could get away with that.
Yeah, of course you have to watch what you're eating, but it's true that I can eat quite a lot of food, but I still have to look what I'm eating. Of course, if you're eating hamburgers and pizzas all the time, yeah, then you also gain weight. But if you eat healthy and then you watch what you're eating, yeah, For me, it wasn't a big problem.
Going in after the Olympics, I mean, 19th is an incredible result, and you showed your potential to maybe have gotten a better result based off of your lap time. So everything's there. It's pointing towards like you're capable of being the world's best. What did that pathway look like? Did you continue to get support from as a professional from your government? Like, what was the kind of afterflow of the Olympics? Did everyone stop caring about mountain biking again, or did you have more coverage?
Yeah, that's a bit difficult story in Belgium. There was, like I said, a lot of coverage, during the Olympics, and also especially because Sven Nys, the famous, cyclocross rider, was also at the Olympics in London. So that's even more coverage because
he's huge.
World famous in Belgium.
I watched the documentary on him.
Yeah, it's world famous in Belgium. Yeah. So, but then I think he stopped mountain biking a few years. I don't know which year, but a few years thereafter. So you really saw when he stopped mountain biking, also the media coverage was a lot less. And also, I had, like a contract of the government to go to the Olympics, but that stopped after the Olympics, and I had to, I think, ride top 12 to renew my contract, and I didn't get that result. So 2013, I didn't have the contract anymore. So that was for me, quite difficult. So that year I had luck that my team supported me, and I could still, with some arrangements, I train like a professional and be a professional cyclist. And then I think I had the luck that I don't know which year, 2000, I don't know, 14 or something, gave me a new contract at the government. So it was 1 year you have a contract, the other year not. So that's quite difficult mentally, because you don't know, for the year after if you're still going to be a professional cyclist. So that makes it quite tough. The pressure is quite high. So you always have to have good results. And also for the contracts, they only look at the European and the World Championships. So you have only 2 chances. So if the European Championships aren't that good, then you only have the Worlds. And if you then have a flat tire, then it's terrible. So that makes it mentally quite difficult. So that was quite difficult for me. Quite difficult. Of course, it was nice to be a professional cyclist, and I really enjoyed riding the World Cups all over the world. But the pressure is getting higher every year, especially then in 2015, the year before the Olympics in 2016. The pressure is, of course, getting higher and higher, because you have to get good results to qualify for the Olympics. But still, 2015 was quite a good year for me, especially the World Championships, where I became 10th, was my best results ever. And again, it showed my potential that I was able to really get a good result if I can do my thing and focus on one particular goal. But then I had a bit of personal problems during the winter. My grandmother and my father died during the winter of 2015 and 2016. So my preparation wasn't going very well. The beginning of the season of 2016 was, what the results were quite bad. So it was quite difficult for me, but I still had to believe that I could go to the Olympics. But it wasn't sure yet, because the norms for the national federation were changed. It was quite difficult. And then I think was in June, only 1 or 2 months before the Olympics, they said to me, you can go, because your results in 2016 weren't good enough. So that was for me the hardest year in my career, because that was very, very difficult for me to not be qualified. And I showed the year before that I could ride top 10 at the World Championships, and then half a year after you're nowhere. So that was that was quite hard, and the straight, thing, because I wasn't qualified for Olympics. Also, my contract at the government wasn't renewed, so I lost everything in like say one day, because they said, you're not going to Olympics, so your dream is gone and your contract is gone. And I was already 31 years then, so you can say again from I already had a wife, a child, and just bought a house. So you can say, I'm gonna try for another year to see if I can stay a professional athlete. If you don't have money, it doesn't work. So I had to stop as a professional cyclist. So that's the pros and cons of a professional sports career. And you see, it's sometimes in 1 year you get from nowhere to hero, and then another year you go from hero to zero, like in a few months. So that's quite hard.
That is incredible. It's kind of, you experience the very ends of the spectrum where you thought, oh, hopefully I have a good, world championships, and then you go into the Olympics. And then on the other end of it, you have an amazing world championships, and you think, I'm going to be going to the Olympics, and they take it away from you. That's
just not good. Sometimes I think about like the way that these governing bodies function, and I understand like
this isn't an unusual story.
No,
is it,
no.
Right, but this is every single cycle.
Yep. But actually, so when us in New Zealand and even in the US, when we look at Europe and all the European countries, we're like, these countries totally have mountain biking dialed. Like they have the best mountain bikers, they must get amazing support. But actually what it sounds like is that the governing bodies in cycling worldwide actually kind of, the way that they function due to funding and how they can apply that funding, it's never really athlete-centered anywhere. Because to have an athlete perform at their best, they need to be happy, they need to be well supported, they need to be able to rest, because as Kevin said, it was that time where he had to rest that when he became better. But then suddenly you get all these pressures where you're not sure if you're going to have a job in a few months. There's no way you can continue to perform at your best for a long time. It's just the pressure is just immense. And I guess what we're hearing is that is kind of everywhere. Yeah,
that's true. I don't know how it works in other European countries, but in Belgium, the disadvantage is that most of the money in cycling goes to road cycling and cyclocross, and there isn't that much money in mountain biking. So there are no professional teams in mountain biking in Belgium. So if you don't have a contract at the government, you have nothing. So that makes it very difficult.
So were you tempted to move to road cycling, or were you just like kind of...
Or cyclocross.
Yeah.
Were you tempted to move to one of those?
I always combined mountain biking with some road cycling, not very much, but in between the mountain bike races, I did some road cycling races, and I wasn't that bad, but I wasn't on a professional road cycling team, so you don't do the big races, so you don't know how good you are in the big races. So it's quite difficult, but I really enjoyed mountain biking. I also did like one winter, like 10 cyclocross races, but I'm not gonna say I hate it, but for me it was not. It was at that time the bikes didn't have disc brakes, so if you brake, it takes 10 meters to stop. And then the tracks are really, really short, a lot of turning, really explosive, but flat mostly. So, you have like a few races that are more uphill, and that was nice, but the flat races I didn't really like. So my passion was mountain biking, so I never had the ambition to go to road or cyclocross.
With the, like the financial side of things, like what are we talking? Like it doesn't sound like you were making millions of dollars, and often when we think, elite professional rider, especially, what we see, well, nowadays, not so much then, social media, when thinking, oh yeah, they're getting paid, a few $100,000 to ride their bike and live their life. But it sounds like, if you, well, yeah, what kind of, if you can speak to it, like what kind of financial remuneration were you able to get from like a team or a government at that time?
Yeah, I had a little luck. My team did everything, material, travel costs, going to the World Cups. That was all covered by my team. And then I had luck that I had a contract with the government. So they paid my salary. The salary was like a normal salary if someone was going to work. So it's good to have a salary. And of course, you can live from it. And if you still, at the beginning of my career, I was still living at my parents. So then it's fine. But then I get a girlfriend, and then we bought a house, and we had a child. So then you have money and you can live from it, but I don't have too much money, let's say. So I don't get rich from doing mathematics.
Wow, it's interesting, when you see this. And you were on the world tour. Is that similar across a lot of the if we call them professional riders? Like, did you talk to other riders? Were they in similar positions around that? We're not talking about the top 1, 2, 3, but we're talking about 10th through to 30th. Like, are they in a similar position to you, or were they?
Yes, I think it's now still the same. I think we have Schurter, and in the past Absalon, and maybe Hermida. That guys, they probably earned good money during their career, but all the rest, I'd say the top riders probably will get enough money to live from it, but I don't think they're gonna get rich from it. And especially if you ride around top 20, top 30, a lot of riders still have to look, I don't say they have a job, but they have to see how they get to the World Cups, or they have to look for themselves, or it's a pity, but in mountain biking, there isn't that much money, so it's pretty hard to live from it.
Is that why you think, I often say to Matt when we watch these races, there's such a big difference at times where you'll have the top 5 and they can seemingly ride away from the pack of 100 or so people, and then it could be minutes. Now these days, maybe 1 minute, because the tracks are getting shorter, could separate maybe the top 15. But do you think that has an impact, that once you get to maybe top 15, top 20, depending on what country and what team you're in, you're getting good financial support, but then after that, you're having to juggle these external pressures outside of training and impacting your recovery, that has an impact on those riders' ability to perform?
Yeah, I think that's quite nicely said. I experienced myself. So if you always have to think every race I have to ride top 20 because it's in my contract for next year to stay in the team, or to get the contract at the government, you're not focused. Yeah, of course you're focused on the race, but you're also focused on the result, and that makes it more difficult. That makes it a bit harder. The stress is coming more and more, and you can't really focus on just on racing. And I think that was my most enjoyable, and I don't gonna say best year from results, but the year I made the most progression was 2011. It was my first year I to try to become a professional cyclist. I had no pressure. It was just, if it works, it works. If it don't works, so what? At least I have tried. So that was my best year, and also the year I enjoyed the most, because thereafter you always, I have to ride top 20, or you have to qualify for this, or that makes it, if you don't have a contract for 4 years, they say you have a contract till the next Olympic Games. do what you want, just try it, and okay, you have the right results, but we're not looking really at the numbers. That makes it much more easy to get results because you don't have the pressure. So I think that's a big problem for a lot of riders.
It sounds like the reason you end up doing mountain biking is because you love it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it to get rich, but you had a really amazing career and you've experienced things that, most people will never ever experience. I'm just wondering, as we kind of come close to the end of our time, are there any, big lessons or big highlights, that you learned throughout your period as a professional mountain biker?
Yes. I think the one thing I've learned is that the most important thing is just to enjoy what you're doing. Just have fun on your bike. Just try to don't think on the results, but just it's for me it was what I was love to do, and I could make a job of it. So that's amazing. And then don't forget that, because a lot of people, if you're going to see that as your job, then it's getting hard, I think. So you just have to see it as your hobby, where you get your money from, and that's amazing, and that's fun. And don't lose that fun. If you're losing that fun, then it's going the wrong way. Then it doesn't keep on working anymore, because you have to train so much and you have to sacrifice quite a lot to get good results. So if you don't like it anymore, of course there are always days you don't want to go train. I think it's with everyone, but in the end, the fun is the most important thing, I think.
And what about in training? Like you are an Olympian. You're at the pinnacle of almost any sport in the entire world. And what would be your advice for anyone training to improve in their chosen discipline? Like what are some of the biggest takeaways in terms of being an athlete that you would, wisdom, I guess, that you'd share with any athlete?
I think, like I said before, the balance between training and recovery is really, really, really important. It's not about training more, because if you train more and more and not recover, you get overtrained and your results will be terrible. So that's the thing that's really, really important. And I think also you always have to keep your goal in mind. So, if you're training for some specific goal, your prioritization has to be good, and don't forget that prioritization, because sometimes, your race is like a training, so the results probably won't be that good, but that doesn't matter, because it's the training stimulus that is most important. So don't forget that. Don't forget what you are working for, and try to focus on your goals.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah,
incredible advice.
That's a great way to wrap it up. That's awesome.
That's amazing.
That's a great tip for everyone. I think, if our listeners can take that away, that's
yeah.
really
Well,
good.
Kevin, thanks so much for coming on, calling in all the way from Belgium. We appreciate you coming on, and we will ensure we keep in touch. Is there any way for our listeners to follow you, to see what you're up to, what you're doing with your coaching and your studies, etc.?
They can find me on just Kevin van Hoovels, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and my coaching is now I'm working for Peak Level, so peaklevel.pe. That's the site where you can find everything about the coaching.
Great. I'll put those links in the show notes. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. It was great to meet you.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.